I'm just going to give you all a pre-warning, but the rugby league is back. Matt, are you as excited as I am for about this Saturday?
Oh, mate, how long have we had to wait for football? It's great that it's finally here. I couldn't wait any longer, but at least my team's going to start with the W.
Already the disrespect. Fair dinkum. Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome to the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel. If you're new around here, I hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. And if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. Yes, indeedy, the National Rugby League is back in 2023, starting this weekend. And to start my first series, the first episode for the series for this year, I'm joined by a co-host that has been in the podcast game for 8 years now, even more than that. I have a cog to the machine that makes up the Green Machine podcast in Matt. Matt, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on tonight, dude. Thank you for your time. How the hell are you?
I'm good, Sam. Thanks. Nice to meet you too. And I hope the Cowboys fans get around you. It's always nice to have a few extra podcasts for other teams around the place. The Green Machine podcast has been going for 8 years. I've been on it for 7. I've been pestering the boys in that other year. That's how I got on. So, it's good fun. It's nice to talk football. It's a way to sort of vent when you need to. And it's always nice to get excited when you have a good year.
And to everybody in the live chat now, thank you very much for coming on and giving this stream a crack as well. Again, Matt, you did just start off there. Hello. What would you go on more about the Green Machine podcast and your fellow co-host, man?
Yeah, so both Nick and Mike are Central Coasters, and they've been doing it. Obviously, Mike's been going since day one. We had another Mike on there for a while, but he had to give it up for a bit. He had some medical stuff he had to deal with, so he sort of had to step aside. Nick, for those who know the Green Machine podcast, is our crazy man. He likes to run ridiculous distances. He actually went to New Zealand just recently and ran 100 miles. So that's 160 Ks, 29 hours later. So, great effort for him. As I say, we've been going a long time now. We occasionally have meetups in person before games. Obviously, we've had more down years than up, but 2019 was a very fun year to be on the podcast, and making it all the ground of the GF was pretty sweet.
Matt, so with me being an ex-Canberran and you yourself being down in Canberra, what are some of the best GIO stadium experiences that you've had?
Well, obviously, 2019 was pretty cool. Nothing can really go past my favorite experience there. Nothing can go past the prelim final against the Bunnies. Most of you will remember it as when Papali steamrolled Cook to score under the sticks, and Rabs just went Papali as he put it down. I was right behind the posts for that try, so it happened right in front of me, which is just amazing. During that game, we went down to 12 men, and we still managed to hold them out for the whole 10 minutes. The crowd went absolutely nuts. I mean, I've been there for a couple of finals. Like, I was there the day Campo did his knee, and Benji then found a way to get Tigers home. I was there that day the very underrated Raiders on that 11-game winning streak beat the Storm, and we out-physicaled them the whole game, to the point where even the boys were just standing in front of the guys just saying, "We've got your number tonight, boys. You're not coming through." So I've seen some great stuff, but yeah, nothing tops that prelim.
Who were some of your players that you rate as your favorite?
I mean, everyone goes to the legends. Everyone goes to the Mal Meningas and the Clydes and the Dailies. look, those guys were fantastic players. Those guys won 3 premierships. Everyone likes them, but I always like to talk about the guys that didn't do that sort of stuff. So I've got a soft spot for Sean Fensom. For those that played fantasy football, you probably know him as Defensum because he'd make 50 tackles, play 80 minutes a game, just tackle his heart out. Like, he wasn't the most skillful bloke running around, but you knew that he was putting in the effort, the toughness, and everyone knows playing 80 minutes in the middle, that's no mean feat. There are only a few guys that even do that now. So that's one thing. Obviously, there's Jared Croker. I think that 300 might be too elusive for him. I'm not sure that the body's going to let him get to 300 games, but he's already got the points record. He's already got the try record. You would love to see him beat Jason Croker to pass that 318 games, but I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And lastly, Hodjo. Nothing can be said more about him than he was probably the number 2 hooker in the world. He was the answer to Cameron Smith. Unfortunately, the body gave out 3 ACLs later, and he's now an eel. So, he turned the Raiders around after 25 years. So he was a massive part of this sort of recent resurgence that is the Raiders.
Again, I lived in Canberra for 30 plus years, and of course there are the games that the Cowboys came to town, and I attended, for example, the JT field goal as the siren went in 15, and then Michael Morgan arguably putting in the best performance of his career in 2017 in -7-degree conditions, might I add. 2 years in a row, the Cowboys faithful had to cop that if you travel down to the ACT. Oh, they were some of the most coldest nights in Canberra's history, and the bloody North Queensland men got done in that instance. But also, I remember the 2013 Heritage Anzac Test match as well. That was a massive event that Canberra got around. And again, the preliminary final, that entire week leading up to that preliminary, and then the week leading up into the grand final, everybody says, "Oh, do you remember the early 90s? Do you remember, or were you around the Canberra Civic when the Raiders were the team?" And I always say, no, that was always before my time. I was way too young to have ever experienced it. But to have that experience in 2019 as a Canberran, to finally see the Raiders in the hottest of spotlights, it was such a tremendous fortnight, man. That just about obviously would have been the best fortnight of your Raiders life since the mid-90s, Matt.
Yeah, it was. I didn't quite understand what was going on in those sort of early 90s. I was probably too young to really get it. Obviously amazing to watch your team run around and win grand finals when you're little, but you don't quite understand it quite as much as you do when you're a bit older. As far as cold temperatures goes, I like to think both our teams have weather advantages, just at different times of the year. I'm certainly not looking forward to watching our boys swelter this weekend. But I'd say you guys get a nice little run there for 4 to 6 weeks in the start of the season when the humidity and the temperatures are high and your boys are ready for it and nobody else is. Just like the depths of winter, the Canberra boys just sort of say, it's not cold, we're fine. And you guys all sort of freeze as you run out of the tunnel. So look, sometimes you got to use that stuff to your advantage. So we'll see what happens.
I think it was about 18 degrees the other night up here in Brisbane, and people were chucking on hoodies and popping on sloppy joes and the like. And I'm in my shorts and shirt thinking, this is fantastic. This is beautiful. Now, a question out of pure curiosity that I'd like to ask you is the new muted Canberra Stadium that's seemingly been in deep conversations now for about 3 years, I'd tend to suggest. I'll throw up a couple of photos as well, man. But the last piece of news that I heard about the go-ahead of the new joint is that it's going to still take place in Civic along London Circuit there, but also, actually, Andrew Barr came out and said he'd rather put the money towards an indoor venue. Are you more up to speed, or what's your thoughts, and how would you like to see it go down, Matt?
Look, the last I heard was Andrew Barr said he's not going to trump up the money. So this has been going on and off for, it's probably longer than a decade, but it feels longer than that. The most recent set of images and stuff talks about I think it's a reversed bowl, which just means that the whole sides are all steeper to try and get enough people in. And They've apparently tried it over in America once before, and it was a success. So I think most people, most fans, most Canberrans would suggest that we probably do need a new stadium, but the pollies keep turning around and saying there's no money, and there's no money because they built a tram instead, and there's long plans to continue to do that. So whether or not this stadium ever gets off the ground or not, I don't know. The most logical place to put it is in Civic, and the site that they've chosen there is one of the old swimming pool sites, and it probably is the best place to put it. But to make it fit, they've actually got to rearrange the road that runs next to it, which is one of the major roads. Parks Way, you'd probably remember Parks Way, but for those in North Queensland, just call it one of the main roads that goes through and past the CBD. The problem is they have to rearrange that a little bit to make it work, and or make a tunnel, which would include a land bridge over to where Floriade is. Some people have probably heard about the flower show Floriade. Well, that's sort of the region this would be placed. But the other problem is you've got to fit at least 30,000 or 35,000 people. Otherwise, you can't get the international stadiums, international events. So that's the other thing, is you got to get the size right. And because of the shape of that particular site, it doesn't fit a stadium on it properly. So you'd have to rearrange what's around it to make it work. But I'd love to see a new stadium. To be honest, I don't want it to be indoors because I like the fact that the Raiders and the Brumbies gain an advantage of the cold. Possibly not as big a deal when you've got Kiwis coming over for the rugby union, but at least in the league, it's useful. That said, I fully expect them to do some sort of roofed setup if and when they do it, because I think the idea would be to have concerts and all sorts of stuff in there as well. So it would be more advantageous for that sort of stuff.
Where it is predicted to take place, if it does go ahead on that Civic Pool site as well, you've got the CIT or a TAFE if you're New South Wales, and the traffic that's already thereabouts anyway, with the new tram line going deeper into southern ACT. It is already a crap fight. It's going to be an even bigger one if it's going to be placed out there at Civic. I cannot imagine the traffic and the disasters that could await for young students who don't live on the north side that want to that need to study out there at CIT in the middle of Civic if they're coming in from Queanbeyan or they're coming in from the south side. So it's going to be an enormous task. But I will say 35,000 seat stadium, I think that's the correct number. I like you look at QCB Stadium, it's less than that. But the Raiders this year, I think they're about 20,000 members already, probably a little bit more than that. And with a roof on top, it's going to stop these people that say it's too cold to go out to watch the Brumbies and Raiders play. Yes, to your point that the Raiders do lose the elements, that they lose probably a little bit of that intimidating factor and lack of desire to want to go play at GIO Stadium because of the cold weather during the middle of winter. But it is the elite stadium. It can. I think 35,000 seat stadium with 20,000 members at this point in time, I think they could reach 23. I think they even could hit 25,000 members if they were to build this stadium with a roof on out there. Is that maybe? Do you agree with that, Matt?
I mean, I think it certainly would help. There are definitely people that don't come around because it's just too cold in winter. So if they do go down the indoor route, I'm sure that will be a part of it.
Yep.
So it's going to be done by dollars and cents, not by perceived wins and losses due to temperature. So my idea would be you have a movable roof so that you can decide whether you're going to leave it open or shut. And I'd like to think for the football stuff, maybe you keep it open and take the best advantage of the winter. But I think for player and supporter comfort, I've got a sneaking suspicion the roof will be on more often than not.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely agreed. Well, with all that out of the way, let's get into what's happening this weekend. Saturday, 5:30 p.m. New South Wales time, 4:30 p.m. if you're living up in Queensland. North Queensland Cowboys are hosting the Canberra Raiders, and on tab.com.au, the Cowboys are at about $1.45. The Canberra Raiders are at $2.75. And Matt, while the team list news has not been announced yet, I think it is a really good opportunity to shed light on what we think could be our best 1 to 18 team for this weekend. And as the guest, man, I'll get you to start off first.
Well, after watching the trial and seeing the news that Tarpany's told Ricky he's not playing 13 this year, I've had to tweak my roster last minute, but this is how I think they'll line up. Seb Chris at fullback, Nick Kotrick and Jordan Rapana on the wings, Matt Tomoko and Harley Smith-Shields in the centres, Jack Whiten and Jamal Fogarty in the halves, which means Papali and Tarpany are our props. I think Levi will be a hooker. This is the part I'm not totally sure about, but I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say you've got Hudson Young and Harawira-Naira on the edges with Whitehead at lock. With the bench of Wolford, Mooney, new recruit Solo, and Horsburgh. With 18, I'm going to say Emre Gul is our number 18, but it could easily be Mariota.
Yeah, it's still a really nice 1 to 18, man. There's still a lot of danger in it, but I have to just ask straight off the bat, the blow over Xavier Savage, did your heart just fall into your foot, man?
Yeah, look, more so that knowing that we didn't really have a backup, but I've been watching the guy grow in every game that he plays, and he's finally put the body weight on that everyone thought he needed. That trial, despite the fact that we weren't playing very well as a team, he himself was doing some of the things that we were worried about last year. So you could see the growth. So yeah, to lose him and then find out that it's the bad sort of jaw fracture that he requires surgery and stuff as well. So it's not 4 to 6, it's more like 6 to 10 weeks. Was certainly heartbreaking. And he's my son's favorite player. So that was even more so for him.
With the return of Harley Smith-Shields, mate, he's a character that he's a person that I've seen a couple of games of him, but because he has been out with unfortunate injuries over the past couple of years, just want to remind me and even the listeners and the viewers, Harley Smith-Shields, man, he can be a very sound player, and I think everybody down at Canberra really touching wood that he absolutely reminds people of how good of a player that he can be.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're right. He's had a couple of bad injuries. So he had ACL, obviously, preseason last year. So he didn't even get to play any minutes last year. He actually did it before the first trial. The year before, he did a bicep, of all things. So he's had a couple of serious injuries, which has kept him out. But he's a local junior. He's a Gungahlin Bull. By all accounts, he was going to start at left centre last year before he did his ACL. So the fact that he didn't meant that Seb Chris got a run, and Seb Chris ended up with a New Zealand jersey at the World Cup. So he's thought of very highly here. He's played centre, wing, and fullback in the juniors. So the kid can play. People have obviously seen a very little bit of him in first grade, but he's got that he's got enough speed to be dangerous. He can break just enough tackles to be tricky to tackle, and he's actually got better hands than I think most people would give him credit for. I'm actually a little surprised that he didn't get the fullback job over Chris, just because he's got a little bit more experience in the role. But then again, he is coming back from an ACL, so perhaps they didn't want to put the workload on him. But yeah, the kid can play.
Yeah. And so too, as you touched on him just a second ago, Sebastian Chris, I think a lot of people actually came to realize how talented this guy is and how much potential he has as well yet to reveal itself. Sebastian Chris, I'm not too sure what he is like at fullback or if he's ever played. I don't think he's ever played at fullback. Are you concerned about that, or are you just going to barrack him in and you reckon he'll do a good job this weekend?
My understanding is his experience at fullback has been, injury related minutes only, and the trial from the other day. So, experience wise, I've got no clue what to expect. The guy can catch, so that's always a good start. I like to think that he's going to bring down all the high balls that come his way. But he's another big body running out of our end. So if we've got Rapana, Kotrick, and Chris, who are all in that high 90s sort of kgs running the ball back, you'd like to think starting our sets will do all right. But he's a high effort guy. He's the kind of guy that will chase that ball all the way till it's dead, just in case it does a weird bounce and he can grab it first. He's that kind of player. He'll do the 1%ers for us. He probably won't have any of the flashy stuff, but he'll do the 1%ers, and with any luck, that'll be enough.
Yep, and moving into the halves pairing now, Jamal Fogarty, we know, missed a quarter, maybe half of the season in 2022. And boy, howdy, didn't he make a difference when he came back into the side, or made his debut for the club when he did eventually come in, man. Now, touch wood again, he's coming in with a full preseason, no injury concerns. That should mean that the Raiders hit the ground running a lot better, or more so than what happened to him last season. Do you reckon Fogarty is about ready to help you guys maintain some form of consistency? What's your opinion on Jamal Fogarty?
Well, I was really excited when we signed Aiden Caesar from the Titans. What is it, 6 or 7 years ago? I really felt like Fogarty was the second coming. They had a lot of the similar sort of traits. They both kick goals very well. Good organising halves that could tackle, which is one of Ricky's biggest things for his halves. He wants halves that can actually hold their own in defence. But I mean, our last year is very much defined by when we had and when we didn't have Fogarty. The first half of the year, he debuted in, I think it was around 12. We were 5-11 when he debuted. So not a great start by us, but his next couple of games, we sort of split 50-50 during the Origin period. And then after Origin, we won our next 8 of 10, which is a massive thing. And that's definitely off the back of Fogarty getting his combinations and his match fitness. So if we can do something similar this year, that would be fantastic, because it means we'll be sitting pretty and should be in the finals race there somewhere.
Yeah. And just now we're moving to the forward pack now. So you mentioned before, and that's something that I didn't hear before you said it, that Tarpany has told Ricky Stewart that he's not going to play lock. So if that's correct, I think that's fair enough. And I think that's the correct move, man, because from what I had been hearing, yes, Adam Elliott left for Newcastle, and I think that is a loss for you guys, because I think he was quite good for you in 2022. But to shift Tarpany back into the lock position after he had the best year of any prop around the planet in 2022, I think it would have been a really, really queer decision to have him move into the lock. Are you happy? Are you happy that he's back into the prop and not going to be playing lock?
For me, the number and Tarpany didn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, him playing lock just meant that he was guaranteed to play longer minutes. You look at someone like Carrigan and you think, well, he's not really a ball playing lock, but he plays big minutes and it's all based off effort. Well, I think Tarpany's the same guy. Well, he's probably a better version. His game is based off the efforts. Now his is more an attacking effort sort of thing rather than Carrigan, which is sort of, he'll do his hit ups and he'll make his tackles. Well, Tarpany will do his hit ups and make you earn the tackle. For me, it didn't matter. I thought he was going to play the same game either way. But Tarpany said, look, I think lock these days is more of a ball-playing role, and that's not my go, so I just want to run straight. He's honest, but as I say, it didn't matter to me which number he's going to play. For me, it's about Tarpany playing enough minutes to have the effect that he had last year. Now, he played lock for the Maoris this year and last year, and he played exactly the same way he did at prop. So for me, it doesn't matter.
Well said. Yeah, very, very well said, man. Just your opinion on the guy that you didn't mention there, Zach Wolford, man. He came in and did a very honourable job last season. Do you think that he just needs another year or half a year just in Reggie's?
Look, I've named him as my 14. I actually think he'll keep Starling out this year.
Keep Starling out this year. Wow.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the thing about Wolford is he's 26. So he's not as young as some people would think. Like he's already been a journeyman. He did his 20s here, and then we said he was too small to play, and he went off to the Bulldogs, and I think he even considered rugby union there for a while, and he's sort of done the full circle and come back round. Look, I think he's an okay hooker. I'm not convinced that he's necessarily a starting NRL quality hooker. He plays a very similar game to Levi, to be honest. I think both of them are much of a muchness. We've discussed it on our pod. I think Levi's probably a slightly better defender, and that's probably more to do with experience than anything else. But that Wolford's probably slightly better with ball in hand. And Ricky prefers experience and prefers a better defensive structure. So I think that's probably why Levi is going to get the nod anyway. But I think because they play so similarly, it means we can get 80 minutes out of the two guys and not have to change a thing.
Yep. Who was your lock again, Matt?
So I picked Whitehead. So moving
Yeah.
him from the edge to the lock. He did try that at the start of last year, and he did actually swap with Harawira Naira in the trial and played lock before he went off.
Yep.
So that'd be my tip now that it's not Tarpany. But to be honest, I'd much rather see Trey Mooney play our young New South Wales captain. But Ricky's been playing him on the edge in New South Wales Cup, and he played on the edge for most of the trials too. I still think that the 15-minute stints he did in both trials right at the end of the game at lock were his best 15 minutes in both games. But we'll wait and see what actually happens. But I think Mooney's got a career ahead of him if he can just get some game time.
Yeah, I did a video a couple of weeks ago with another YouTuber, and I have earmarked, I've zoned in on Trey Mooney to be that breakout player for 2023 for the Raiders, man. And that's based off reading the stats of what he did last year and seeing him play in that under 19s New South Wales game, man. He was such a force in that contest.
Yeah, look, it's a little bit tricky in that particular game in that there was probably half a dozen guys that had NRL experience by the time that game kicked off, of which he was one. And I think those guys stood out because they were physically more advanced than some of those other blokes. And I think when you're playing with boys, that matters. But yeah, look, the kid's got skills. He's always had skills. He's, made all the rep sides. He's done all the right things. He's been captain in most of them. So, he's ticking all the right boxes. It's just getting him over the line this year will be the trickiest part.
All right, I can talk about Raiders for a long time, man. I do have a super soft spot for him, but allow me, please, to illuminate you on your rivals this Saturday night. This is my 1-18. What I would do, what I think will happen at fullback, Scott Drinkwater, our wingers, Murray Taulagi and Kyle Felt. Our centers, Peter Hiku and Valentine Holmes. Our halves combination, Tom Dearden and Chad Townsend. Our forward pack, Jordan McLean, Ruben Cotter with Reece Robson in at hooker. And the back row, a point of contention. There's a lot of mix and matching that could happen here, but Jeremiah Nanai, Cohen Hess, and Jason Taumalolo. And the interchange bench for me would be Jake Granville, James Tarmo, Taniel Isay-Drugu, and I'm forgetting another name or two out there. Would probably name Griffin Neame. Thank you very much. Griffin Neame as well, man. And 18th man, if he's all right to play, and because I think he is suffering a bit of an injury, Jack Gajewski as well in at 18th man. Thank you for reminding me about Griffin Neame. How could you forget the big polar bear version 2? But Scott Drinkwater, man, I cannot really. I think he had a really good year last year, but he finished equal fourth in the Dally M points. Scott, after having such a really torrid time of trying to gain consistency in NRL since he moved up to North Queensland in 2019, for him to have the year that he did after not playing the first 4 games or so, 3 games of the year, man. Scott Drinkwater, man, what are your thoughts on that bloke?
Well, I know that we tried to pinch him from Storm before you guys did. So I rated him very highly, but he decided to go somewhere warm. So I can't begrudge him for that. I must admit, I always thought he was a fullback. The kid wanted to play 5'8", and I said, "You're not 5'8", mate. You can't tackle." And Peyton made that blatantly clear when he first arrived. But he's always looked very good at fullback. I don't understand. I mean, they're essentially the same role these days anyway. But yeah, look, he's talented. He's got all the skills. He probably won't ever be the best fullback in the game, but he's quality. He's quality, and you probably wouldn't change him for too many other players.
Yep. Yeah. And the centers for the North Queensland Cowboys, I think, are going to be the key for this weekend's game. As we said before, Harley Smith-Shields and Matt Tinaku are probably the favourites, are going to win those centre positions this weekend. And they're coming up against veterans. It's the young bulls versus the veterans this weekend in the centres with Valentine Holmes and Peter Hiku. And if they maintain the rage, from based off of what they did last year. I think that's where we can win this weekend against the Canberra Raiders. Valentine Holmes has scored a lot of points against the Raiders in his past few encounters against them, and Petty Hiku, I think, was top 3, maybe top 5, maybe top 3 centers in the game last year. I thought Petty Hiku was outstanding. What's your thoughts on Hiku and Holmes this weekend?
Look, I think Hiku is underrated. Hasn't been a favourite of mine, but for any time actually, he's always been in the Kiwis jumper, which means the guy can play. But he's never really been the flashy guy. I think defensively is where he sort of makes his bread and butter. He's pretty good at holding down the fort there. I mean, we've all seen what Val Holmes can do. The guy's very, very, very talented. He's very fast. I must admit, I thought the defensive workload would be his biggest bugbear playing out there. You got to make some tough decisions at center. But he seems to have stood up to it. I mean, I didn't think he was worth $1 million to play fullback. I don't think he's worth $1 million to play center, but they've got a niche for him here and it's working. And he's had a full year there now and he slowly got better over the course of last year. So if you can maintain what he was doing at the back end of last year and bring it to the start of this year, I think you guys will be held in pretty good stead.
What do you think about the forward battles? So the two props, right, for both sides. We've got Papali'i and Tarpany versus Jordan McLean, who are both who are all three of them are about 7 foot tall, right? And then you've got Reuben Cotter in there at jersey number 10 in a land among giants sort of thing. But Reuben Cotter, bro, absolutely exploded last season.
The guy's a terrier. I mean, he might wear the number 10, but I think technically he's your 13. And just like I think Lolo wears 13, but I'm pretty sure he's playing prop these days. Sometimes I don't think the jumper number matters when it's talking about an 8, a 10, and a 13. Obviously, there are some exceptions. But if you're a ball running 13, you can wear 8 and 10 and it wouldn't matter. Look, Reuben Cotter can play. I mean, he's a hooker, so he's got some good hands. He's got some acceleration because you need that sort of stuff when you're coming out of the ruck. But his greatest strength is his work rate. That guy just doesn't tire out, which is crazy. But I think Reece Robson's not that much different, really, in that regard. Both of them are terriers. Both of them are little nuggety guys. You don't roll over them. Those guys will tackle you all day long and keep coming. So I must admit, Cotter was someone that was one of those guys that people weren't sure whether he was ever going to get there because he had a string of injuries before he finally got to first grade. But you can see the talent. You can see why people kept saying, no, we're going to hold on here. We're going to wait because sometime he's going to repay us. But yeah, look, Cotter's phenomenal. He's probably got one of the better mullets running around in the league too. So hopefully he can rock that again this year.
The best mullet. So the back row, man, is interesting. Jeremiah and I, and what's his name, Cohen Hess, sorry, versus Corey Hadawira-Naira and the other gentleman, Hudson Young. That's a really juicy prospect. Who would you give the edge to in that battle?
Well, Nanai and Young are probably the two standouts from last year on the edge. One of them did get an Origin jumper and the other one didn't. I think I honestly think Hudson Young was sort of hard done by not getting an Origin jumper and then almost even harder done by not getting at least into the Aussie squad.
Yeah, agreed.
But, someone has to miss out. I've been saying Hadawira-Naira is our second best edge basically since we've got him. And they promoted Hudson Young ahead of him, and of course you can't cut the English international. So if they do go the way I've just named the side, which is Whitehead at 13, I think we'll finally get a chance to see whether Hadawira-Naira can actually lock down that edge. I think attacking wise, Hadawira-Naira is probably our best option. He can run a line, he can offload. He will put a shot on in defense, but the worry is he likes to put the shot on, which means he can open up holes, and that's the bit that worries me. But Nano is a bit of a mistackle magnet too, so you never know. Between the two of them, they might cancel each other out. I think Cohen Hess is your problem. I think our two are better than Cohen Hess, and therefore we'll take the edge there.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Nice. Sweet as, man. Yeah. So you mentioned a state of origin there. Look, I agree. I think Hudson Young was dreadfully unlucky not to get an Australian spot. And a New South Wales jersey beckons for him in 2023. And same too with Reece Robson. And I think that's another component to this, is that I think Robson does have the wood over both Levi and Wolford. Would you agree with that?
By a mile.
Yeah. Yep.
By a mile. Yeah, Robbo's a good nine. Yeah, he's better than both of ours for sure.
Yeah, the interchange bench for the Cowboys as well. Name, in my opinion, and Tani Drugu and James Tarmo. Tarmo, what do you reckon about James Tarmo? Would you have picked him in your 17 on the bench, or would you have had him play Reggie's this weekend, Matt?
For the Raiders or for the Cowboys?
Or just let's say the Cowboys.
Look, I think his best days are probably behind him, but I don't think that's why Peyton's brought him to the club. I think he's brought him up here for a couple of reasons. One, to sort of send him out where he thinks home is. I think he's always felt like the Cowboys was his place. I know he's played for a few other clubs now, but I feel like that's where he's felt most at home. So I think that's one of those veteran picks. But also, you bring a veteran into the locker room to help the locker room, not necessarily your game day squad. So I can see him and McLean sort of sharing the minor minutes in your prop rotation. But I think experience-wise, those two will keep everyone else on the straight and narrow. They can let the young bulls work around him. Is he in your top 17? Or probably not long term, at least not when you get Lukey and Leilua back. I think you'll be struggling to pick both McLean and Tarmow. That might be a case of you got to pick one, not the other. Yeah. But we'll wait and see if and when that happens. But yeah, I suppose this week I probably would pick him, but long term I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure as well, man. But I do like what you said there, because that's the opinion that I pretty much hold as well, is that he has been brought up for leadership. I do think that if there is a bit of a chink in the armor, so to speak, lack of a better term, is that the forward pack is relatively young, still relatively young. And so you've got McLean and James Tarmo. Sure, Ruben Cotter is a terrier, but he's still learning his craft, moving from a hooker into a front row position. And Griffin Neem is that real spark that's really a shining light that will be a front row for us for many years to come. But I do think it is still relatively inexperienced in the forward pack. And so bringing in a leader like Tarmo will settle things down and include Taniela Drugu in that inexperience as well. So with all that being said, bro, let me say this. This is going to be the 48th meeting between the two clubs. And the record stands at 25 wins to the Raiders, 22 wins to the North Queensland Cowboys. It feels like every other time, it feels like every second match that these two sides have, it's always a thriller. It's always a 1-6 margin. Would you agree with that? Would you say that every second game, Cowboys and Raiders usually produce a hell of a contest between each other?
I must admit, I do feel like Cowboys-Raiders games are sort of that one-score side of game. I'm actually surprised that we have more wins, but I'm guessing we must have chalked up a few while you guys weren't that crash hot. Yes. Because it certainly doesn't feel like we've beaten you very often recently. So, yeah, look, it's going to be close. It's round one, which means both teams are going to be a bit rusty. It's going to be hot. It's going to be a tricky game. Round one, I think, is a lottery for most teams anyway. No one ever seems to sort of hit the ground running, and you've got teams that'll end up in the top four that lose in week one, and you think, what happened there? And you just say, well, it was round one. It's a lucky dip. I'd like to think we get the win this week, but I'm actually not feeling that confident, to be honest.
Oof. Before we get there, Matt, the weather conditions might actually bring, I think it does bring Raiders a little bit more into the fold, man. Yes, it's going to be 30 degrees by kickoff, but all day, even during the game as well, it is predicted, so it might change. But at the moment, we are due for a rainy, thunderstormy sort of contest up there at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. So possession and error rates are going to be the key in this game, bro. And I think that does bring the Raiders back into it, because last year Cowboys and Bulldogs, yes, they had awful seasons in 2021, and the Bulldogs sprung the upset because of, I reckon, wet weather footy, and the Cowboys weren't allowed to play that dry, fast track. I think the wet conditions actually, I would like to get your opinion on this, that the wet conditions actually might bring the Raiders back into the contest a little bit more and maybe even favour them. What do you reckon?
The funny thing about that is I'm not convinced that wet weather football is the Raiders go. Cold, yes. Wet, not so much.
No.
The Raiders sides have always been pretty big, so rolling down the field won't be a problem for us. If it's wet, I think we roll down the field fine. Error rate worries me big time. We're very good at piling up some errors, but it's red zone in the wet. Don't think we'll be inventive enough. In the past few years, we have been hesitant to grubber, which is really the go in wet weather football. So it'll be tough to see what happens. But if it's wet, at least that should bring the heat out of the game a bit. So that at least makes me feel better that we'll be able to go the 80 minutes with them if it's going to be wet.
Yep. So how do you think the Raiders are going to win? If they do pull off the win, how do you reckon they're going to win it this weekend?
If we win, it's because we roll through the middle and we just continue to roll through the middle, and you guys can't stop us. It'll be Papali, Tarpany, just rolling through the middle, doing what they want to do, and then hopefully giving half decent ball to someone like Hudson Young or Harawira and Ida to just punch the little hole or steamroll your small outside backs, as in halves, sorry, for that sort of one-on-one try sort of start of stuff. I think, honestly, the only way forward for us is to roll you through the middle.
Yo. Okay, so final prediction, final scoreline, and do you have an anytime try scorer for us?
I would say, to be honest, I'm not confident we're going to win. I'm going to say Cowboys 20, Raiders 16. Anytime try scorer. Let's say Val Holmes crosses.
Oh, you bugger. You pinched my one. Well, I'm going to go the Cowboys, a little bit bigger of a scoreline. Actually, I'm going to go 24 points to 14. I think the Raiders will get a penalty goal in this contest. I think it'll be a 10-point margin, not the 13 plus. The line is at 6.5 as well, just for everybody that's really into their punting as well. So yeah, I'm going to go the Cowboys, and I was going to say Valentine Holmes because I truly believe that, while the hooker battle, I think Robson and Granville will win that too. I do think that Valentine Holmes and Petahiku, the veterans, are going to be really strong up against Harley Smith-Shields and Matt Timiku. But mind you, Matt Timiku is an absolute nugget of power, bro. He was very, very impressive last year. Really looking forward to see how he goes this season. And look, that's it. Matt, thank you so much for your time, man. I've actually really enjoyed this conversation with you tonight, dude. So the links to the Green Machine podcast social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, their Linktree as well, which is where you can hear their podcast. The links are all down in the description box below. Do you want to let the people know out there what's coming up in the future for the Green Machine podcast and any other bits of news, bro?
Yeah, well, obviously we tend to record on a Tuesday night. As I was telling you, we do the Teamless Tuesday thing probably just like you do, and so we finish late on a Tuesday. So sometimes it's up late Tuesday, but it's usually up sometime Wednesday morning. So if you want to do your run in the morning or your trip to school or work or whatever it is and listen to it in the car, that's all there. We like to try and talk to past players and current players if we can snag any. We've actually had the assistant coach on a couple of times former assistant coach in Brett White a couple of times. So, there's extra pods floating around on the system there with different players and coaches and stuff, which is also very cool. But obviously we're a week to week Tuesday night deal, and we'll do very similar things to what we've done tonight and talk about the game and how we think it's going to go and all that sort of stuff. It's good fun.
No, fair income. It is the best Canberra Raiders podcast going around in all of social media online. It is really, really good, and I highly recommend that you all go check out the Green Machine podcast. Matt, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a very nice weekend. Enjoy your footy, man. What are you doing for the game when it all kicks off at 5:30 down in New South Wales?
Look, I'll be probably sitting on my couch watching it nervously. I'm hoping that my son will also sit through the whole thing rather than get cold feet at halftime and disappear outside and kick the footy around. But yeah, look, it's the same sort of deal here. If I can't get to the game because it's not at home, then I'll try and put the telly on and chew my nails off.
Yo, true. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you so much again, Matt. Thank you to the Green Machine podcast for being so accommodating as well. Enjoy the weekend. If you're a Cowboys supporter, go Cowboys. And of course, if you're a Raiders supporter, thank you for giving this a crack, and go Raiders as well. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Enjoy your footy this weekend. Thank you again, Green Machine podcast. Adios.